In this video, we are going to talk about args and kwargs in Python. So here I have a function. I'm calling it add. It takes two inputs or two parameters, a and b, and it is returning a plus b, the sum of the two numbers. Now, let's just go ahead and call this function. So let me pass the value 3 for a and 5 for b, and it is returning 8. So this works if I have to add two numbers. But let's say I want to create a function which can take variable number of arguments. So here it is taking two arguments, but what if I want to sum three numbers? Or another time I want to sum four numbers. So I don't want to create separate functions for this. I want the flexibility to provide any number of arguments in here. I don't want to constrain myself to two arguments like I'm doing here. So that's where args and kwargs come into picture. The args, we call it asterisk args. The asterisk args allows us to pass variable number of positional arguments to a function. Allows us to pass variable number of positional arguments to a function. So let's see how this works. So here, how can I modify this function, the add function, so that it can take variable number of inputs? If somebody wants to add three numbers, it should be able to accept that as well. If somebody wants to add five numbers, it should be able to take that as well. Right now, it doesn't work that way. If I make this 8, you see, it will give you type error. It will say that the add takes two positional arguments, but three were given. So it doesn't work. So what we can do instead is we can start using this args. So we can say asterisk and then the variable name. I'm calling it args, but it could be any name. And then let's just go ahead for now and print args here. I'll modify this function later on so that it returns the sum of the numbers as well. But for now, let's just go ahead and print args. Now, if I say add and pass two values, it will take to the two values and it's printing those two values. If I say add 1, comma 2, comma 5, comma 6, so I'm passing four values or four arguments. Again, it is able to accept those four arguments without any issue. So how is it actually working? So this asterisk args here collects all the positional arguments that you're passing, all these values that you're passing into a tuple. So if you have observed here, these are tuple. How do we know these are tuple? Because these are enclosed in these parentheses. This is a tuple, even this is a tuple. If you don't trust me, we can go ahead and check the type of the args argument here. And you can see it is a tuple data type. Now coming back to our previous problem, what we wanted to do, we wanted to sum these numbers, the arguments passed to this function add. Now this is a tuple, so that means we can iterate over it. So I can create a variable where I want to save my sum. Let's assign it the value 0. And then I can loop over all the items of my tuple. Args is a tuple data type. So I'll say for I in args total is equal to total plus I. And then finally, I can return the total here. So let's go ahead and run it. It is giving me name error. Why is it giving us name error? Args is not defined. So this has been misspelled. Now if I run it, it is giving or returning 5. This will return 14. So it's giving me sum of 1 plus 2 plus 5 plus 6. That comes out to be 14. So that is how the asterisk args work. Now this, I'm calling it arg, but it doesn't have to be args. You can call it whatever you like. Generally, people, when they are using positional arguments, the variable number of positional arguments, they would go ahead and call it args, but the name could be anything. You can call it nums if you like here. And then, of course, we have to reference nums instead of args. And this thing as well works. So name here could be anything, doesn't have to be args. Let's try one more example. So let's say we want to print or display the names that are inputted. So display name, and I'll just say names, and I'll simply do for n or name in names. And let's just go ahead and print the name, not returning any value. And now this display name, let's go ahead and pass 0 arguments. It still works. If I pass 2 values, 2 names, this also works. So once again, where do we use the asterisk args? So wherever we want to pass variable number of positional arguments, we don't know at the beginning how many inputs would be required. In such situations, we use args, the variable number of positional arguments. Let's next discuss about Kwargs. So Kwargs, basically, when you have passing these keyword arbitrary arguments, you prepend it with double asterisk. This allows function to accept any number of keyword arguments, allows function to accept any number of keyword arguments. What is the format of the keyword argument? The keyword argument are in the key is equal to value format. So let's try it out. Let's say we have a function which basically prints the information about an individual. So let's just call it that function print info. And we don't know how much amount of information would be passed, whether a person would share their name and their city, the hometown, or they also share their age, their profession. So we don't know how many arguments would be passed here. So we are going to use the Kwargs here, the keyword arbitrary arguments. And let's just go ahead and print Kwargs for now. Let's call this function print underscore info. And this function, the values have to be passed in keys equal to value format. So if you just give the name here, that will not work. It will give you an error. The values have to be in the keys equal to value format. Say key is name, because I'm passing the name of the person, is equal to value. Value is Aryan. Maybe I also want to pass their age. So age is 7, integer number 7. City. City is Mumbai. So we are passing 3 arguments here. Let's go ahead and run it. So did you notice what is the data type of Kwargs? The data type of Kwargs is a dictionary. How do we know it? Because the items are enclosed in curly brackets, right? And they are in the key colon value format. That means the values that you pass or the arguments that you pass to the Kwargs here, the keyword arbitrary arguments, it collects the argument passed into a dictionary. So let's just go ahead and write that down. The Kwargs collects all the keyword arguments into a dictionary. So that means you can loop over the items of the dictionary here. You can go ahead and apply any of the methods of the dictionary like dot item, dot values, dot keys. So let's try that out. Maybe we want to print from this function print info, we want to print the information about the individual. So we will loop over the items of this dictionary. So I'll say for key, whole, comma, value in Kwargs.item. Do you remember this function or method from our previous discussion? This basically, this function here returns the tuple of the key and the value, list of tuple of the key and value. So print, I'll have a f string here and I'll simply print the key, and then colon, and then the value. Now let's run it, and this is what we are getting in the output. You can also apply just key. If you just want to see the key, you have the function key, which will give you all the keys here. And here, instead of this, I can just say, so it's giving me all the keys, and then you have values, which will just give you the values. So let's just save it in a variable v. And this is what we are getting here, all the values. Now you can use args and kwargs together. You can use args and kwargs in the same function. So let's try that out. So I'll create a very simple function. Maybe I'll just call it show data. We want to just print the data from this function. And this takes the args also and the kwargs also. Doesn't have to be args, everyone. You can call it whatever you like. So let's just make it x and y, the name of the parameters. And let's go ahead and print positional arbitrary arguments and keyword arbitrary argument. Let's call this show data function. So show underscore data. So first it is expecting us to pass the positional arbitrary arguments. Let me pass some numbers. And then I'll pass some keyword arbitrary arguments. So it knows that, okay, till this point it is positional arbitrary arguments. Why? Because the values are not in the key is equal to value format. And from this point onwards, we are passing the keyword arbitrary arguments. So for Python, it is easy to know that, okay, till this point, it is positional arbitrary arguments. And after this, we have keyword arbitrary arguments. So let's say name. So yeah, it is giving us 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a tuple, as you can see, the positional arbitrary arguments. And for the kwargs, we have this dictionary. So everyone, the question is, can we have the kwargs before the args? So let's try it out. And can I have something like this? Let's just go ahead and swap the position of these two parameters. So no, you cannot have something like this. It will give you syntax error. That means the order of arguments have to be maintained. What is the order? So when you are defining the function where you have both args and kwargs, first you would have your regular arguments, your normal arguments, regular arguments. Then you can have args and then kwargs. So this is the order that needs to be followed. So let's try it out. So let's say I have a function. And let me just go ahead and call it my function. And let's have some regular arguments in there. A, B, these are positional arguments. And then I have my args, asterisk x, and kwargs, asterisk y, double asterisk y. And for now, let me just put a placeholder here, pass. I'll come back and write this function. So this is fine. If I call this my function, this works without giving any error. So maybe I say 1, comma 3. So it knows 1 is corresponding to A here, 3 is for B here. And then whatever I pass after that, after the two values or the two arguments that I've passed, that would be for this particular argument, the args. And then whatever I pass in the format of key is equal to value, that would be for the kwargs here. So let's say I say x is equal to 1, y equal to 2. And let's go ahead and print A, comma, B, comma, X, comma, Y, all in one line. Let's run it. So this is what I'm getting. So for Python interpreter, it's pretty easy to understand which value is passed for which parameter. But what if we turn this around a bit? We first give asterisk X, control X. Now what do you think will happen? So it's not giving any error when we run this particular function, when we define this function. But when we call this function, so you see, this will give you an error. And it does make sense. Why? Because how does Python interpreter knows when this positional argument stops and the value of A and B are being passed? So it doesn't know like whether this till 6 is your value of X or till 7 or till 5. So yes, it will give you error like it is giving here. What if I say A is equal to 6 and B is equal to 7? So now this is fine. Why? Because now the Python interpreter knows that till 1 till 5, we are passing the value for args. Then we are passing the value of A and B here. And then finally, we are passing the values for the Kwargs in the key is equal to value format. So this is fine. What if I introduce another value here, 9? Again, it will give you an error because obviously it doesn't know what this value is to which particular parameter it belongs to. So this will error out. So let's look at one more example. I want to join those words to create a sentence. So let's call this function make sentence. And it will take words, and this has to be an arbitrary argument, positional arbitrary argument. Why? Because user can pass as many words as they want. Return, and we want to join these words with a space. So space dot join function we are going to use to join the words passed by the user. So words is a tuple, and it will join each item of the tuple using this space. Let's call this function make underscore sentence. And let me pass some values here. Python is awesome. Let us call this function, and this is what we are getting. We are getting one string, and all the items are separated by space here. So now that you know about these dynamic arguments, the arguments which can take any number of inputs, can you think of any built-in function that uses dynamic argument? Any function that comes to your mind? So print, right? Print can take multiple inputs. We can say print hello, comma, world. So in this case, the print, we are passing two arguments to the print function. But we can also go ahead and say print hello world and maybe an exclamation. So three values I'm passing now. We are passing three arguments. So print is one built-in function that use dynamic argument. Another one is max. So you can say max of 3, comma 1, comma 5, comma 6, and it will return you the maximum number, max of these numbers. Now here we are passing how many arguments? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 arguments. But we can go ahead and pass even more. Here I'm passing 10 arguments and it's returning max of the numbers passed. So that's all everyone on args and kwargs. A quick recap, args we will use when we want to handle positional arguments dynamically. We will use kwargs when we want to handle keyword arguments dynamically. And then we can use args and kwargs together for a lot of flexibility. I hope you enjoyed today's session. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.